morning, Edenton Street. It is such a joy to be with you all today. About a year ago, our church began a process that we call visioning as we prepare to enter into our next season of life together as a church. It's hard to believe, but it's been 14 years since our last visioning effort, and during that time, much has changed in our church, in United Methodism, and in our world. American Christianity and our community face challenges old and new, and our members, neighbors, and conference are asking, what does the future hold for Edenton Street Church? Our visioning work has prayerfully discerned the answers to two questions. First, what is God calling Edenton Street to be? And second, what is God calling us to do? Today, we celebrate the answer to the first question. What is God calling Edenton Street to be? Said another way, who is Edenton Street when we are at our best? To help answer this question, our amazing visioning team has explored our church's history and has listened to you, our members, our staff, our partners, and our community. Thanks be to God, more than 400 people spoke into this visioning work, describing when you have seen and experienced Edenton Street at its best. Pastor Kevin told us about these cards that are in front of you this morning. We hope you see some of your thoughts reflected in the foundational elements that are on the cards that were distributed today. These include our vision statement, which describes what we seek to be: a spiritually alive and connected community where lives are transformed and Christ's hope is shared with neighbors near and far. Our mission statement, which describes how we seek to be this. Edenton Street invites all people to know, love, and serve God, each other, and the world. And finally, our core values, which describe the culture at Edenton Street. It's how we interact with each other. It's how we hope our neighbors experience us. These values are what we're referring to as the 4 C's: centered, connectional, curious, and compassionate. And as you see at the bottom of the cards, there is one thing that will never change about Edenton Street, and that is the fact that we are sharing Christ from the heart of Raleigh. On January 12th, we will share what has been discerned in answer to the second question: what is God calling us to do in our next season together? It is a robust 10-year vision that we're very excited to share. But we know that the success of any vision rests on the character and the culture of an institution. So before we get to what's ahead, we must embrace the foundational elements that make us unique and will serve as our guideposts in the years to come. Before we answer what God is calling our church to do, we must be, and we will be, at our best. This is a pivotal moment in our church, in our community, and in our world. We live in a time when millions of Americans have walked away from the church, perhaps because of pain that they or their loved ones have experienced, perhaps because of a life change, or because of other competing priorities. Many others have never felt connected with God or a faith community. In addition, our neighbors in this congregation, in our parish and beyond, are hurting. Some suffer the devastating consequences of natural disasters, like our friends and families in Western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. Some experience economic hardship or emotional pain. Some worry about their children or their loved ones, the future of our communities, of our world. In the face of pain and hardship, as well as other modern distractions, and also some cynicism about the church, our neighbors may wonder where they can belong and find community, where they can find meaning, where they can find hope. Jesus teaches us how to meet this moment. In today's gospel lesson from Matthew, he tells us we must be salt and light, truly different in a way that brings hope to the world. In the days of the early church, salt was a precious commodity. It was a rock, but it was a rock that was different. It was a life-giving preservative, a source of flavor, and an enhancer of goodness. Jesus also says we must be light, not hidden, not turned inward, but the light of the world, a city on a hill. We are called to be outwardly oriented so that people can see, feel, and know that we are different. And so they might be inspired to be different as well. We are called to be salt and light, to be different in a way that makes us spiritually alive and connected, a place where lives are transformed because we are sharing the hope of Christ.
So, can we be that different? Absolutely. Scripture, the history of Edenton Street Church, and the story of the early church teach us that we are resilient, we are bold, and we can thrive in any context. In Romans, Paul speaks of the power of faith and tells us that troubles produce endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Christians know something about trouble, endurance, and character. At Edenton Street, for example, we have experienced our share of trouble over the years, from destruction by fire twice to the challenges of the COVID era. Yet Edenton Street has not only endured, we have generally flourished. After the second fire in 1956, members of Edenton Street built this beautiful space we enjoy today. We have planted churches, bringing Christ to communities outside of this city block. We have founded nonprofit organizations, showing Christ's hope in action. We have been a church home for people of differing perspectives and experiences who form meaningful relationships as we seek and serve Christ. Are we perfect? No. We're human. From time to time, each of us will fall short of the ideals expressed in this vision, mission, and values. But we can take heart in the fact that through God's grace, the early church spread dramatically, despite challenges and suffering we can barely fathom today. How? Jesus and his followers were different. Jesus called together a team of disciples that included a tax collector and a zealot, two people on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, and everyone in between. He expanded the group by creating a place at the table for the marginalized. The early church united Jews and Gentiles, connection across ethnic differences in a way that only a higher calling could do. Christians were taught to love everyone, including strangers, deeply and fiercely. That's what we are called to be at Edenton Street. Salt and light, so different the world can't miss it. The final question is, will Edenton Street be at our best for our next season of life together? We believe the answer is yes. Over and over during this visioning process, we have been inspired by numerous examples of salt and light within this congregation. We have been inspired by you. We believe God has big plans for our church, and we believe in all of us to answer God's call. How will we be at our best? First, let's recognize the examples of salt and light all around us. When you see someone in the Edenton Street family exemplifying the vision, mission, or values, let them know and let others know. Over the coming weeks, our pastors will be preaching on these foundational elements, and we would love to hear and share your stories. Second, on our own, with our loved ones, and in our church groups, let's challenge ourselves to be salt and light. Over the coming weeks, find at least one way you can more fully know, love, and serve God, each other, and our world. Let's prayerfully consider how each of us, and we as a church, can more fully live into these values. Start after church today. Help prepare flood buckets for our Western friends and neighbors. Let our neighbors see and feel a spiritually alive community that is centered on Jesus, that connects differently, that listens and speaks differently, that loves and serves differently, and that as a result transforms lives. Finally, come to church on January 12th, not just ready to learn about the 10-year vision, but to answer God's call to make that vision a reality. Whether you have been at Edenton Street for 50 years or 50 minutes, whether you have leaned in or stepped back, whether you are fully committed or just exploring, please know that we don't just want you here, we need you. If we recognize the salt and light around us, if we challenge ourselves to be salt and light, if we commit to answer God's call for Edenton Street's next season, then we will be ready to share from the heart of Raleigh something even more precious than salt: hope.